If you missed last week's video on how to find all the different ways to fly to Tokyo in business class, part 1, I'd recommend watching that one first and then coming back to this video. This week, we are covering even more ways to fly to Tokyo in business class. As a refresher, we have a form where you can request personalized award search tutorials for free through the GeoBreeze Travel newsletter. Tokyo is one of the most requested destinations, so we are going over every single way to fly direct from the USA to Tokyo. And in case we haven't met, my name is Julia. I am the founder of GeoBreeze Travel, and I personally get about $100,000 worth of travel every year for about 90% off by using points and miles. And I'm not the only one that I do this for. We have clients as well, and we typically save our clients about $30,000 in travel in the first 6 months of working with our team. We want to provide you with a clear path to luxury travel as well with these free step-by-step tutorials. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to jump right in with a common question we get, which is, can you use Delta Miles or other SkyTeam partners to fly over to Tokyo?
The next example we're going to go through is with Delta, where you can fly on Delta-operated planes in business class over to Japan if you're departing from Detroit, Atlanta, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Seattle, or Honolulu. And let's do a quick example from Seattle. Over to Haneda, let's just say one way, next March, one passenger, shopping with miles. Click on the checkbox next to my dates are flexible. And make sure you click advanced search and click first class. That's kind of like their equivalent of the lay flat business class that we see with other airlines. It's not going to be Delta One, but it should still be okay. Then go ahead and click search. And then from here, we can see that the pricing is ridiculous. The lowest that we see for this particular random week that I selected was 275,000 points per person, one way. And then if we click the price calendar, that's going to be the lowest price that we see from somewhere like Seattle over to Haneda. And this is typically the kind of pricing that people see where they're like points and miles are not going to work, because especially if you're trying to get from somewhere like the East Coast, Atlanta, over to Haneda. Let's look at what that pricing is going to be on Delta. Oh, that's expensive. 410,000 points plus $6 in taxes and fees. This is the common thing that people see because all they have are Delta miles and they don't know to search for something else. So since you're on this channel and you've made it this far into the video, you probably know there's a better way to search for this. I would go to seats.aero, and under the search tab, I typed in all of those airports where they operate a Delta flight. Atlanta, Minneapolis, Detroit, Los Angeles, Seattle, Honolulu, over to Haneda Airport, picked some dates, make it a wide flexibility because there are not a lot of these flights, and then make sure your operating carrier is DL, that's Delta. When I search for business class lowest, the lowest that I was seeing was for these direct flights from Honolulu over to Haneda. It's still 175,000 points. You're already halfway over the Pacific. I would not pay that. And even with some code share things, it's kind of available on Air France's website, Flying Blue, from, let's say, Minneapolis over to Haneda. It's not really the route that you're looking for in business class because this one is Delta, but it's just from Minneapolis over to Chicago, and then you're actually flying in Japan Airlines. And it's 152,000 points or 167,000 points, which is still way more than I would be willing to pay. If you wanted to do this in economy instead of business class, they do have some economy routes for about 33,000 points starting off. And that is going to be on a Delta operated plane. It's 33,000 points in economy from Seattle over to Haneda, which is fine. It's a perfectly fine price. If it's an 11-hour flight, I have the 10K rule for business class. I'd say it's a 5K rule for economy, where if you're flying 11 hours, 50,000 points is probably okay for that long of a flight. So this is a fine price. Or if you wanted to book it with your Delta miles directly, it is 34,000 points if you are flying from Honolulu, about 38,000 if you wanted to fly from Seattle, but that is going to be a partner booking as well, where you're booking it through Virgin Atlantic instead of directly with Delta. If you want to use your Delta miles directly, I don't know if it's just because seats.aero doesn't track it because the pricing just gets too high and people laugh at it, but it looks like it's only tracking Honolulu over to Haneda instead of any of those other airports that I typed in. So long story short, if you want to fly to Japan, Delta miles would not be the way that I recommend doing it.
Are you enjoying these types of tutorial videos? If yes, please let me know. Click that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for even more points and miles tips every week. And if you love free resources that let you maximize your points, check out geobreezetravel.com/quiz. There, you will find a free short quiz that will point you to the best resources depending on whether you are trying to earn more points, redeem points you already have, or something else. And by taking the free quiz, you will also get access to our free Points 101 course. This is a fantastic resource for anybody just getting started with points and miles. Up next, let's cover how to find flight deals to Japan if you are looking to experience United Polaris or if you have a lot of United miles to burn.
Our next example is going to be how to find flights to Japan using United. If you want to fly on United over to Japan, you can do so from Newark, Houston, Denver, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, and also Washington, D.C. And I will also say that it's much easier to find saver space with this if you are booking really close in rather than further out in the calendar. So let's do an example where we go to united.com. We're going to search one way, booking with miles. Let's say we have flexible dates from Houston over to Tokyo. And we can even say Tokyo, all airports in July for one adult in business class. And I'm recording this in July, so we're going to look for last minute availability here. Go ahead and click Find Flights. As this calendar loads, we see that the lowest points price is going to be 100,000 points per person one way if we wanted to fly from Houston over to Tokyo in business class. And we see that here as well, where weirdly enough, the price for this flight is the same in economy as business class, but economy usually goes as low as 55,000 points per person one way. And that's if you wanted to fly mid-July through mid-August. But then as we search further out in the calendar, you're going to see that it gets more and more expensive and that there are fewer and fewer of these different saver space flights. Yeah, like you see, by the time we get to mid-August to mid-September, the lowest points price is going to be 170,000 points, which is more than I'd be willing to pay. This would be the cheapest points price that I found is 100,000 points if you only have United points and you want to book it this way. However, there is a way to book this for cheaper if you have flexible points that you can transfer over into Air Canada. So once again, I went over to seats.aero, and then I'm searching for all of the different airports where there's a United flight from the US over to Japan. Newark, IAD, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Denver, Houston, over to Haneda or Narita. And then once again, I would search closer in for this one. They don't tend to have as much if you're searching further out in the calendar. Flexible dates always help, and make sure your operating carrier for this one is UA so you find United flights. Go ahead and click search, and then click on the down arrow next to business to find the lowest business class flight options. And so here, with Air Canada, you'll see that you can get these same flights for 75,000 points versus paying 100,000 with United miles. Like for here, let's run an example through aircanada.com. Let's look for Denver over to Narita on August 11. Let's see if that exists. So what we would do is go to aircanada.com, click one way, booking with airplane miles from Denver over to Narita, Tokyo on that date that we found on seats.aero, August 11. And then let's just search one adult for now, click search flights. And here we do see that flight from Denver over to Tokyo operated by United Airlines, and it is 75,000 points plus 77 Canadian dollars, which is a little bit nicer than paying 100,000 points with United. But keep in mind that with United, you do have lower taxes and fees. 77 Canadian versus $5 US doesn't make too much of a difference in the grand scheme of things, because I think that's like $55 difference. I would rather pay 75,000 points plus 77 Canadian rather than 100,000 points plus $5 in taxes. But if you're like, we're pretty strapped for cash, I've got a ton of United miles sitting there, then definitely go for this option because that would be the better option for your particular situation if you wanted to fly on a United Airlines plane over to Japan.
If you are in the market for a new card so that you can earn points to fly in business class to Japan, but you're not sure what card to get, check out our free credit card consultation form at geobreezetravel.com/consultations. We will send you a personalized recommendation based on your particular goals, budget, and lifestyle. And through these free credit card consultations, we send out our affiliate links as well as referral links from our Points Accelerator students. That way, we can help spread the joys of earning more referral points. If you would like for us to send out your referral links so that you can get more referral points this way too, join the Points Accelerator waitlist at geobreezetravel.com/waitlist so that you can be one of the first ones to hear about when we reopen for enrollment. And we tend to send out discount codes that way too. Up next is how to find flight deals to fly in Japan Airlines business class, and there are a lot of ways to go about doing this. Here are some of my favorites.
Next up, we have Japan Airlines, which has about a dozen different routes between US cities and either Haneda or Narita, Tokyo. So the combinations would be Boston, San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, JFK, Chicago, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Honolulu into those airports. And I'm actually going to exclude Honolulu from this one because it messes up a lot of the pricing results where things look really cheap, but it's just to the Hawaii one. And since we've already covered Hawaiian Airlines and a couple other routes with Hawaii, we're just going to do continental US using Japan Airlines. Let's say that we want to search really far out and that we want to fly on Japan Airlines as the operating carrier. If we sort this by business class lowest, we actually see that there are a lot of flights that you can book from either Seattle or Los Angeles or San Francisco or San Diego over to Narita using Qantas. And if we wanted to do this in June of next year instead of July of next year, we'll see some similar pricing as well, where it looks like the cheapest airport to fly out of is Seattle, where it's 75,000 points. Everything else starts at 90,000 points. So let's see if we can find some of these on Qantas's website. This is going to be Seattle over to Narita on June 22, 2025. So what we'll do is we'll log into Qantas, and then we are going to go to the US version of this site. I don't know why it always defaults me to the Australian version. And then we are going to search from Seattle over to Narita, and let's just say one adult for now in business class on that date that we found, which was June 22nd, 2025. Go ahead and click Search Flights. And here we do see Seattle over to Narita, Japan, as promised for 75,000 points, transferred over to Qantas plus $260 in taxes and fees. And that's not bad at all for a 10-hour flight. One thing I do want to point out about Qantas is that even on seats.aero, if you're like, okay, I need 4 seats available, it's still going to say that these Qantas flights are available. But from what I've found doing different client searches, they actually tend to max out at 2 seats per plane. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to book for a larger family. It might tell you on seats.aero that there are seats available, but always make sure you check it with the actual airline, because you'll find pretty quickly that there's not actually 4 seats available in business class here. If you wanted to search not so far out, but you're like, I kind of need to book in the dead zone, which is 6 months out, then your best option is not necessarily going to be Qantas. Earlier in this tutorial, we went over how you can find some different flights with American Airlines miles. On Japan Airlines, that'll only cost you 60,000 points. Or if you wanted to book it with Alaska miles, if you have the Alaska card or you have Bilt points, then it's only 75,000 points there. But let's say you're like, I don't have American Airlines miles, I don't have Alaska miles, I don't have Bilt, I just have like Chase and Amex or Capital One. What do I do? That is where the Avios program comes in, and it doesn't show up on seats.aero, but what I would do is search for this on British Airways instead. Where what you'll do is log into British Airways, and let's say that you wanted to fly from Boston over to Narita, because I think there are quite a few Boston flights that are showing up here. And if they're showing up with American Airlines in Alaska, they'll probably show up with other One World carriers as well. So let's search Boston to Narita in January 1st, business class, click Get Flights. Say that you don't want any stopovers because we're looking for those direct routes into Tokyo. And here it says there's nothing on that exact date, but I do like that they now have this award calendar where it'll say, okay, if I want to fly Boston to Narita, what dates might be available? Looks like nothing in that particular date range, which is highly unfortunate. So if there's nothing on British Airways, we don't have to give up. If you're like, okay, I don't have American Airlines miles, I don't have Alaska miles, I don't have Bilt points, what do I do? If there's nothing on British Airways, the nice thing about Avios is that you can transfer points within the Avio system. We'll link to a video tutorial about how you can do that here. But the next one that I would check would be Qatar. So here we'll say one way from Boston to Narita around January 1st, book an award flight, and click search flights. And on January 1st, we do see that it's 100,000 points for one person, one way to fly in business class. That's a bit steep, but if we have flexibility on dates, where we could fly maybe December 31st or December 30th instead, then we see that it's only 60,000 Avios plus $135 in business class. And here, we do see that it's not the direct Japan Airlines flight we were hoping for. This one is operated by Qatar, which is not a bad option. It does go the long way around the world, where it goes over Doha into Japan. But if you're like, I'd like to maximize my flight time actually and get to fly on Qatar business class instead of just a few hours, like 10, 11 hours on Japan Airlines, I'd rather get about twice that much by flying on Qatar for the same number of points. If that's what you want to maximize for, then this would be a great option as well. And you can find these through Qatar instead of the British Airways Avio site, where it's saying there's nothing available in that time that you want to fly. So that's if you want to book more mid-range. If you want to book closer in, like some last-minute flights, and hopefully fly on Japan Airlines, most of your options, once again, are going to be with American or Alaska. You have a couple of options with Qantas, but I did also want to cover this option, which is with Air France Flying Blue. So let's filter down to Air France. And it looks like there's not a ton of business class availability that is super cheap, but Chicago over to Haneda for 95,000 points is not terrible as a direct flight. So let's see if we can actually find that on Air France's website. So what we would do here is log into airfrance.com, click on this tab Book with Miles, one way from Chicago over to Tokyo, and then we'll just plug in that date that we found on seats.era, which is July 28th for one adult in business class, and click search flights. And here we do see that price point for 95,000 miles. And if we want details on it, then this is not what I expected. This is actually operated by Air France and goes, once again, the long way around the world through France into Haneda. But if you want to book the long way around the world, that works just as well. This is also interesting that it's available for 75,000 points if booking with Alaska. It's interesting that seats.era would alert us to that when searching for Air France. And it says that there's some different ways to book this as well, where you could book San Francisco over to Haneda as a code share through Air France with 127.5 thousand points. But once again, seats.era is like, you can get that for half off if you book it with American Airlines instead. So those are some different ways to book Japan Airlines with code share partners.
We have one tutorial left, and it is, of course, how to find flight deals if you want to fly on ANA business class, which is one of the most sought-after flight experiences and best sweet spots in the world of points. If you are interested in leveling up your points and miles game to fly to Tokyo or anywhere else, we have a couple of options for you. The first one is the GeoBreeze Travel Patreon, which you can join starting at just $5 per month through patreon.com/geobreezetravel. Each month, we prepare personalized step-by-step tutorials for all of the different routes that our members request. We also provide open forum group coaching where you can ask any questions that you have about points, miles, and credit cards in general. And we talk through some of the tricks that I don't really mention on social media. And if you are looking to get even more free travel with points, and you are a business owner or individual who spends $100,000 per year or more on expenses, check out our one-on-one points portfolio management service. We typically save our clients somewhere between $30,000 to $60,000 in travel, in the first 6 to 12 months of working with our team. If that sounds like something that you would be interested in, book a free intro chat with us at geobreezetravel.com/intro call to learn more. Okay, here is how you can find some of the best flight deals with ANA over to Japan.
And now we will cover the airline that everybody wants to fly and the sweet spot that everybody wants to but has trouble finding and booking, ANA business class to Japan. So this one's tricky for a few different reasons. Number one, ANA's website does not make it easy to find these. What I like to do instead is go to seats.aero, click on Explore, and click on United. From here, you can show flights from North America over to Asia. I would search for the full year, and in the search bar, go ahead and type in NRT, which is Narita Airport's code, and you also want to type in NH. That is the IATA code that you will need for finding flights that are directly operated by ANA. Sort by business class lowest, and we see here there are some last-minute flights from Houston, Denver, or San Francisco over to Tokyo. But if you want to plan further out, there is a lot more availability if you are okay with positioning to Mexico City and then flying to Tokyo from there. I know this entire video has been about direct flights from the United States, but it is notoriously difficult to find award space from the US over to Narita with this particular route. There's a little bit of availability if you are flying from Hawaii, but otherwise, a lot of what you're going to find is more last minute, especially if you are searching for flights next year. Pretty much every direct route that you're seeing is going to be Mexico. So you could just book this through United. It's going to be 110,000 points per person, and unfortunately, there's only one seat available for most flights. If you want to book it directly with ANA, what you will do is go into their website, and you need to book this as a round-trip flight instead of one-way. So write down one of the dates that you like from your seats.aero search for the outbound flight. Let's say June 2nd from Mexico over to Japan. And then you're just going to search for the exact same thing on the way back. From Asia over to North America, where we're searching to Narita, or from Narita with the code NH for 2025. And here there's a ton of dates from Narita over to Mexico City as well, so let's just say June 16. We'll type those dates into ANA's website. So we have Mexico City over to Narita, Tokyo, departing on June 2nd, 2025, and returning on June 16. Checkbox plus or minus 3 days for flexibility, and we're just searching for one person in business class for now. Go ahead and click search. It looks like there's plenty of dates with seats available, though most of these dates only have one seat available, unfortunately. But go ahead and click next, and we'll see that the total price for a round-trip ticket is only 105,000 miles plus about $600 in taxes and fees. So it is less than half the price of what United would charge for this same flight if you book it through ANA directly. Unfortunately, Amex points are the only ones that transfer to ANA, and it could take 2 to 3 days for your points to actually show up once you transfer them. So you just have to hope that all of this award space doesn't suddenly disappear. If you're like, okay, I don't want to pay 110,000 United miles, and I don't want to wait 3 days for my points to transfer over, is there another option? Yes. Sometimes you can find these through Air Canada, but for this particular one, I was striking out when searching for it with Air Canada, but that is another option as well. Or you could search on Virgin Atlantic. So if you are flying between Japan and Mexico, for business class round trip, it would be 120,000 points. But the nice thing about Virgin Atlantic for this code share is that you could book one way for 60,000 points. So if you just want to do one way, or you only have enough points for one way, or you can only find availability for one way, then Virgin Atlantic is the way to go. You won't be able to find this on their website or on the internet though. What you'll need to do is search for the flight dates that you want on United, and then call Virgin Atlantic and ask if they see the same award availability. You can call this number 800-365-9500. There's a pretty good article on 1 Mile at a Time that walks through directions for how to book this, but the award chart in that article is a little bit outdated. They have another article with an updated chart. It's slightly annoying that you have to go back and forth between two different articles to get all of this information, but it's pretty easy to find on the internet. So those are your different ways. If you want to find and book business class with ANA, is you could book it on United, which is pretty expensive. You could book it on ANA, which is cheaper, but points take a while to transfer over. You could book it on Air Canada, if it even shows up there, or you could call Virgin Atlantic and book it through there. So between all those different options, you have some options on how to find ANA business class, but like I said, it is pretty tricky to find more than one seat on this, especially with business class and especially with first class. But that rounds out all of the different ways that you can fly to Japan from the United States or Mexico in business class with points.
I hope you found those tutorials useful, but Tokyo is actually our second most requested destination through the GeoBreeze Travel newsletter, where we have a free award search request form. And next week, we are covering the number 1 most requested destination. Feel free to take guesses in the comments on where that destination will be. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed these tutorials, I think you will enjoy this video next.